Ladies and gentlemen, let's start with a question that's bound to ruffle feathers across the WNBA. Did the Indiana Fever actually look stronger without Caitlin Clark on the floor? Now, before you slam the brakes, let's be clear. Clark is the franchise star, the face of women's basketball, and the very reason Gainbridge Fieldhouse transformed into a glowing cathedral of double C logos last night. But here's the shocking truth. While she sat in street clothes for her 16th consecutive game, her team didn't just win, they dominated. They didn't just survive without her. They shattered 6 franchise and league records in one night, the type of performance you'd expect from a fully healthy, championship-level roster. Instead, it came from a lineup missing not just Clark, but 4 other key players. The Fever crushed Seattle 95-75, leading wire to wire, and showed a balance and toughness that some skeptics argue might even be harder to achieve when one superstar is soaking up all the attention. Think about the symbolism of that night. Outside the arena, Clark's Nike logo burned bright in neon. Inside, fans wore her CC shirts like it was a playoff whiteout. She owned the spotlight without logging a single minute. Yet when the final buzzer sounded, the story wasn't just Clark's aura, it was the team on the floor that refused to be overshadowed. Aaliyah Boston bulldozed defenders in the paint, Kelsey Mitchell carved her name into the Fever record books, Odyssey Sims showed she's far more than a stopgap veteran, and Lexi Hull redefined the meaning of toughness after taking a blow that would have sent most players home. So, let's return to the controversial hook. What if the Fever's ceiling isn't just Caitlin Clark's greatness, but the combination of her star power with a roster that has now proven it can thrive without her? Because make no mistake, the Fever didn't just win a basketball game. They made a statement to the entire league. Indiana is more than Caitlin Clark, and when she comes back, the rest of the WNBA should be terrified. Here's the paradox of last night's showdown in Indianapolis. Caitlin Clark didn't check into the game for even a single second, yet she was the most visible figure in the building. How? Because Nike turned Gainbridge Fieldhouse into what fans were calling Caitlin Clark Arena. Her new double CC logo wasn't just launched quietly, it was splashed across giant screens outside, glowing across the skyline, draped on banners inside, and printed on t-shirts handed to every single fan who walked through the doors. Within minutes, thousands of fans slipped them on, creating the surreal sight of an arena-wide uniform. It didn't feel like August basketball anymore. It felt like the start of a cultural movement. The energy was impossible to ignore. Pre-game ceremonies turned into a celebration of Clark's brand. Fans roared when her name was announced, even though she was in a hoodie and sneakers, not a jersey. Her teammates even admitted afterward. The buzz wasn't just about the game, it was about being part of a historic moment in women's sports. And yet, here's where the tension lies. Clark's aura gave the Fever a stage bigger than basketball, but the players on the court had to decide whether they'd shrink under that spotlight or rise to match it. That question was answered quickly. Indiana didn't just play, they owned the night. And here's the critical takeaway. The Fever proved they can carry Clark's star power without becoming dependent on her. Her presence brings eyes, cameras, and cultural weight, but her teammates brought the toughness, the scoring, and the execution to make sure the game lived up to the hype. The building may have belonged to Clark, but the night belonged to the Fever. That balance brand plus basketball may be the secret weapon that turns this franchise into more than just a one-player phenomenon. If there was one moment that captured the soul of this game, it wasn't a three-pointer, a fast break dunk, or even one of Kelsey Mitchell's record-breaking shots. It was the sound of 2 players' skulls colliding so loudly that the entire arena gasped. Just minutes into the first quarter, Indiana's Lexi Hull went full throttle after a loose ball, crashing head-to-head with Seattle's Gabby Williams. The collision left Hull with a swollen knot on her forehead that looked brutal on the broadcast replay. Fans fell silent. Teammates froze. For a team already missing Caitlin Clark and 4 others, losing Hull in that instant could have been the emotional breaking point of the season. But here's the part that flipped the script. Instead of heading to the locker room and calling it a night, Hull walked off, regrouped, and less than 10 minutes later, checked back into the game. The swelling was obvious, her forehead visibly marked, but her energy was even more undeniable. Suddenly, the crowd that had been worried a moment ago erupted. Hull wasn't just playing, she was setting the emotional tone. Her gritty defense, relentless rebounding, and willingness to fight for every possession became the heartbeat of Indiana's performance. After the game, Aaliyah Boston summed it up perfectly. Lexi is the definition of tough. Coach Stephanie White went even further, calling the hit disgusting but praising Hull for embodying the grit and resilience the team needed. Hull herself, she downplayed it, joking that her teammates told her the swelling actually made her look beautiful. That attitude, shrugging off pain, laughing through adversity, ignited her teammates in ways stats can't measure. The Fever went on to dominate the rebounding battle 42-32, with Hull grabbing 9 of them herself. Every loose ball, every extra possession, every defensive stop felt amplified by her toughness. And that, perhaps more than any record broken, was the emotional backbone of Indiana's victory. It wasn't just about skill, it was about refusing to fold. In a season full of injuries and setbacks, Hull's moment turned into a rallying cry. This team doesn't break. It bends, it battles, and it bounces back stronger. When the lights were brightest, Aaliyah Boston didn't just show up, she took over. If Lexi Hull's toughness was the emotional spark, Boston's power in the paint was the steady drumbeat that kept the Fever in control from start to finish. Against a Seattle team stacked with talent, Boston was a force of nature, racking up 27 points on 10 for 18 shooting while grabbing rebounds, setting screens, and bullying defenders inside. Every possession she touched felt like a mismatch. Seattle simply had no answer. But what makes Boston's night even more historic is what she added to the record books. With 1 rebound in the third quarter, she officially became only the second youngest player in WNBA history to reach 1-0 career rebound. The only player to do it younger? Tina Charles, a name synonymous with greatness. That milestone alone would have been headline-worthy, but Boston wasn't finished. She also became the second fastest player ever to hit 0 rebounds, and 350 assists, putting her in exclusive company with none other than Candace Parker. Think about that. At her age, Boston isn't just keeping pace with legends, she's joining their conversations. And yet, it wasn't just about stats. Boston's presence altered the game's very rhythm. Seattle couldn't attack the rim without worrying about her physicality. They couldn't rotate fast enough to stop her footwork. And on offense, every time she posted up, the defense collapsed, opening space for shooters like Mitchell and Sims. Aaliyah Boston wasn't just scoring, she was dictating how Seattle had to play, forcing them into mistakes, bad shots, and rushed decisions. Her teammates recognized it too. In post-game interviews, Coach Stephanie White praised Boston's tone-setting aggressiveness, while opponents admitted they couldn't keep her contained. Fans saw it, analysts saw it, and the box score proved it. This wasn't just a good night, it was a declaration that Boston is no longer a young prospect. She's a full-fledged superstar, carving her name next to Parker and Charles in the history books and giving Indiana a foundation to build around for the next decade. And the best part? This is only the beginning. Boston's dominance is no longer a surprise, it's an expectation. Nights like this don't just define games, they redefine what's possible for the Fever. If Aaliyah Boston was the anchor inside, then Kelsey Mitchell was the flamethrower on the perimeter. On a night when Indiana couldn't afford anything less than brilliance, Mitchell delivered history. With her 21-point performance, she officially broke Caitlin Clark's single-season Fever scoring record, an accomplishment that feels almost poetic. Think about it. Clark set that record just last year as a rookie, redefining expectations for the franchise. Yet here we are, 1 year later, and Mitchell has raised the bar again, proving that Indiana's future isn't tied to a single player, it's built on a core of stars pushing each other to new heights. And Mitchell didn't just break the record, she also became the league leader in 20-point games this season, putting her ahead of every other scorer in the WNBA. That's not just consistency, it's elite dominance. Night after night, Mitchell has been the Fever's offensive lifeline, carving defenses with her quick first step, her ability to shoot off the dribble, and her knack for hitting daggers when the team needs them most. Against Seattle, her movement off the ball was lethal, slipping behind defenders, cutting through screens, and creating mismatches that even veterans like Nneka Ogwumike admitted were impossible to contain. But here's the nuance. Mitchell's rise doesn't overshadow Caitlin Clark, it complements her. When Clark returns, imagine the pressure this duo will put on defenses. Clark stretching the floor with limitless range, Mitchell slicing into lanes, finishing at the rim, or pulling up from mid-range. Add Boston controlling the paint, and you have a three-headed monster that few teams in the league can strategize against. That's not just offense, it's a nightmare for opposing coaches. For Mitchell, though, this moment was deeply personal. After years of carrying the Fever through losing seasons, she's finally in the spotlight she deserves. Breaking records in front of a roaring crowd, on a night dedicated to Clark's brand launch, Mitchell still found a way to carve her name into the story. And that's what makes her performance so important. It wasn't just about scoring points, it was about planting a flag and saying, "This is my team too." In the end, Mitchell reminded everyone why she's been the Fever's silent superstar for years. Clark may bring the national attention, but Mitchell is the steady hand that ensures Indiana keeps climbing. Together, they're about to change the league. When Odyssey Sims signed with Indiana, many thought she'd simply be a stopgap someone to provide veteran minutes until Caitlin Clark returned. But against Seattle, Sims rewrote that narrative in permanent ink. She wasn't just a contributor, she was a star, dropping 22 points, including one jaw-dropping, off-balance 35-foot bank shot that sent the arena into chaos. Sims reminded everyone that experience is a weapon, not just a footnote. Her performance wasn't flashy for the sake of it, it was strategic. Sims controlled tempo, attacked gaps, and consistently punished Seattle when they tried to overload Boston and Mitchell. And the records back it up. Sims officially became the second fastest Fever player in franchise history to record 50 points and 25 assists. The only one to ever do it quicker? Caitlin Clark herself. That put Sims in a conversation nobody expected her to be in when she first put on the Fever jersey. But beyond the numbers, what stood out most was her composure. While younger teammates rode waves of emotion, Sims carried herself with the calm of someone who has been through playoff battles before. She knew when to push the pace, when to slow things down, and when to take the shot herself. Her presence gave Indiana a stabilizer, a secondary engine that made sure every Fever possession had purpose. Even more important is what this means for the Fever moving forward. When Clark comes back, the expectation is that she and Mitchell will dominate the backcourt. But now, with Sims proving she can score and facilitate at a high level, Indiana suddenly has a three-guard rotation that could overwhelm defenses. Think about the versatility. Clark stretching defenses, Mitchell slashing, and Sims punishing teams that sag off her. That's a lineup built not just to compete, but to contend. For a player many assumed was nearing the twilight of her career, Sims made one thing clear against Seattle. She's not here to be a background piece. She's here to make history too. And if Indiana's going to make a deep playoff run, her blend of experience, toughness, and scoring touch might be the X factor that nobody saw coming. There are good offensive nights, and then there are nights that etch themselves into the record books. Against Seattle, Indiana pulled off something that hasn't happened for the franchise since 2011. 3 different players, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Odyssey Sims all scored 20 or more points in the same game. But here's the kicker. None of them played more than 30 minutes. That's almost unheard of in today's WNBA, where stars often need to grind out heavy minutes just to hit those kinds of numbers. What this really showed is how balanced Indiana has become. Boston set the tone inside with her footwork and strength. Mitchell torched defenders with her speed and perimeter shot making. Sims lit up the court with her veteran savvy and that ridiculous deep bank shot. 3 completely different styles of scoring, all firing in unison. Seattle had no chance to pick their poison, because whichever option they tried to stop, the other 2 punished them immediately. The numbers put this performance into perspective. When 3 players share the scoring load so evenly and so efficiently, it doesn't just stretch defenses, it breaks them. Seattle was forced into frantic switches, desperate help defense, and eventually, mistakes that opened up even more easy opportunities for the Fever. For Indiana, this wasn't just about points, it was about sending a message to the rest of the league. We don't need Caitlin Clark on the floor to drop 90-plus points and dominate an elite opponent. The psychological impact of this can't be overstated. For years, the Fever were seen as a one-dimensional, bottom-tier franchise. Now, they're proving they have multiple weapons, multiple leaders, and multiple ways to win. And when Clark returns, defenses will have to guard 4 legitimate scoring threats, something almost no team in the league can handle. What Boston, Mitchell, and Sims accomplished together wasn't just a statistical oddity, it was a snapshot of what the Fever are becoming. A team with the depth, the talent, and the unselfishness to share the spotlight while still burning opponents. That's not just growth, it's transformation. While Boston, Mitchell, and Sims soaked up the headlines with their scoring explosions, there was another Fever player whose impact may not have been as loud on the stat sheet, but was absolutely essential to the win, NaLyssa Smith. On a night filled with highlight plays and record-breaking performances, Smith's game was a reminder that basketball glory often comes from the plays that don't make the highlight reel. Smith finished with a modest stat line compared to her star teammates, but her fingerprints were on every possession. She set bruising screens that freed Mitchell for open threes. She fought through contact to secure offensive rebounds, giving Indiana second chances that demoralized Seattle's defense. And defensively, she was relentless, switching onto quicker guards, contesting mid-range shots, and boxing out Seattle's bigs with a discipline that rarely shows up in headlines. But here's the real value of Smith's role. She gave the Fever balance. Boston may dominate the paint with her power, but Smith's mobility stretched Seattle's defense in ways they weren't prepared for. Her ability to step out, hit mid-range jumpers, and pull defenders away from the rim opened the floor for Sims and Mitchell to attack. That kind of versatility is what transforms a big 3 into a big 4. Teammates and coaches have consistently praised Smith for her willingness to sacrifice personal stats for team success, and this game was proof of why that matters. She didn't need to score 20 points. She needed to make life easier for those who did, and she executed that role to perfection. In fact, what Smith provided was the glue. Without her energy, her positioning, and her unselfishness, Indiana's offense wouldn't have flowed as smoothly, and Seattle might have clawed their way back into the game. Instead, her behind-the-scenes effort ensured that the Fever never lost control. In a league where stars are often defined by points and highlights, Smith reminded everyone that championships are built on the foundation of players who do the dirty work with pride. And for Indiana, she might just be the piece that holds this rising dynasty together. If there was ever any doubt that Aaliyah Boston is the heart of the Indiana Fever, this game silenced it. Scoring 24 points with absolute dominance in the paint was impressive enough, But what stood out wasn't just her numbers, it was how she led. At just 23 years old, Boston already carries herself like a seasoned veteran, setting the tone with both her play and her voice. Against Seattle, her leadership was the invisible force that kept Indiana steady. From the opening tip, Boston's body language was unmistakable. She demanded the ball when the offense looked stagnant, she encouraged teammates after missed shots, and she barked out defensive assignments like a floor general in the paint. When the Fever went on their decisive run in the third quarter, it was Boston's energy, clapping, pointing, urging everyone to lock in that fueled the surge. She wasn't just playing the game, she was orchestrating it. But leadership isn't only about emotion, it's about execution. Boston made herself available in every way, posting up with authority, fighting for rebounds, and altering shots on defense without fouling. Seattle tried doubling her, but she read those situations beautifully. Kicking the ball out to shooters or swinging it quickly to keep the offense flowing, that's the kind of decision-making you expect from veterans who've spent a decade in the league, not a second-year star. And here's what makes this even more significant. Caitlin Clark may be the face of the franchise, but Boston is clearly becoming its soul. Clark's gravity will always bring media attention, but Boston's leadership is shaping the Fever's identity. Hard-nosed, resilient, team first. Those aren't just words, they're values. Boston embodies every time she steps on the court. After the game, teammates praised her composure, saying she never lets the team spiral when opponents go on runs. That presence, especially in high-pressure moments, is priceless. It's the difference between being a team with talent and being a team with direction. With Boston anchoring the locker room and Clark eventually returning to electrify the perimeter, Indiana has the rare combination of a vocal leader inside and a generational star outside. That's the foundation of championship teams. Against Seattle, Boston showed she's not waiting for the future, she's building it right now. The Fever's victory over Seattle wasn't just a box score triumph. It was a statement, a thunderous declaration that Indiana is no longer the struggling franchise that other teams circle on the calendar as an easy win. This was a playoff-level performance executed without their most famous star, Caitlin Clark, and that is precisely why it sent shockwaves across the WNBA. Let's break it down. The Fever didn't just scrape by, they dominated a top-tier team, with multiple players putting up historic numbers, a rare 20-point trio, and a defense that suffocated Seattle into frustration. For a franchise that has spent years clawing out of irrelevance, this game was more than a win. It was proof of identity. Proof of resilience, proof that they're no longer waiting for the future, they're living it now. The implications stretch far beyond one game. For the Fever, this victory injects belief into every corner of their locker room. When Clark returns, she won't be rejoining a desperate team trying to survive, she'll be plugging back into a squad that has already found balance, depth, and confidence. That's the difference between a team that plays for headlines and a team that plays for rings. For the league, it raises the stakes. The WNBA is entering an era of parity, where no team can be overlooked. And Indiana just proved they belong in that conversation. Imagine being a playoff contender, preparing for a Fever roster that features Boston's dominance, Mitchell's explosiveness, Sims' resurgence, Smith's hustle, and then, oh, by the way, the addition of Caitlin Clark raining down logo threes. That's not just intimidating, that's nightmare fuel. And for the fans, this is the turning point they've been waiting for. Fever supporters have endured years of disappointment, but now they're watching a team that not only wins, but wins with swagger. Every rebound Boston snatches, every three Mitchell drains, every deep bomb Sims hits, it all adds to the sense that something historic is brewing in Indiana. Make no mistake, this wasn't just about beating Seattle. This was about rewriting the narrative of the Indiana Fever. From overlooked to overachieving, from rebuilding to rising, from underdogs to contenders. If the Fever can sustain this momentum, the question isn't whether they'll make the playoffs, it's whether the rest of the league is ready for what's coming. Because after a win like this, one truth is undeniable. Indiana isn't just back. They're coming for everyone.